you have not seen part 1 of our top 50 coasters for the start of this year, I'd recommend checking that out before watching this one, or you could watch them out of order. So I guess Ryan, go ahead and start off your top 25. What do we got?
Thunderhead at Dollywood is my number 25. I just got to ride this in December. It was running better and smoother than ever. This is one of those GCIs that has ejector airtime rather than floater. This one has the strongest laterals of all of them, the most variety, and is the most well-paced. There was no dead spots in any of the ride when I was there. Got to ride it 10 times, a couple times at night. It's a pretty good night ride. The ending is the standout moment of this ride because you just slam back and forth and you get ejector air with laterals. It is by far my favorite GCI.
Number 25 is Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This is the most underrated coaster ever built as far as I'm concerned. A lot of people do not like Twisted Colossus because it doesn't always duel. And the only time I hear people talking about the airtime is when it duels. So what the people are essentially saying in terms of the people that don't duel, no duel means no airtime, which sounds crazy, right? There's so much powerful airtime on Twisted Colossus. Every single element was good. I really like the zero G-roll on the blue track. The Top Gun stall was pretty good as well. Never got to ride this in the back row, but I'll be definitely trying that when I go back there later this year. And I'm super excited to see if it's still a top tier RMC.
My number 24 is Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City. Ever since I got on this, I thought it was a good ride. 2019, I was all right. Then these past 3 years, I've really grown appreciation for the ride. This is one of the most re-rideable coasters out there because you get a different sense of direction every single time. You start off with the 90-degree drop out of the station, which is absolutely ridiculous. One of the biggest gut punches of any coaster. The dive loop is good. Launch, it's mock launch, so it doesn't really do much. Overbank, you know, a little hang time. Loop, hang time. Then you have my favorite element of the ride, which is that twisted camelback, which is absolutely nuts. If you go through it spinning, it's even crazier. Then you have the zero G-roll. And then you have the bunny hop. And if you're sitting in the back row, you feel the kick and acceleration while you're still getting airtime, which is absolutely nuts. If you ride it in the front row and you're facing towards that turn after launch 2, you get slammed with the strongest dose of laterals I think I've ever experienced. Every time I get on this ride, I'm hoping for that moment again. All in all, it is one of the best designed coasters out there.
If I were to ask you what the most iconic coaster out there is, you'd probably have a different answer. For me, my answer will always be Space Mountain at Magic Kingdom, and that is my number 24. I was super excited to get back on this coaster for its 50th anniversary, but due to unforeseen circumstances, I was not able to do that. So my last rides on this were March of 2018. I actually rode it 25 times during that trip, had 3 days there. Loved it basically the entire time I was there, but then again, I was at Disney World the summer beforehand, so I had already ridden the other coasters less than a year prior. This thing actually has legit airtime, which you don't usually expect for a Disney coaster, and it is insane. It's got some jank, but it's one of those coasters where I feel like the jank adds to the experience. And the ride just has so much aura. I mean, great theming throughout, amazing soundtrack, and actually there's a couple different overlays I've never experienced, like their Christmas overlay, or the one that I'm most excited to try out someday, the Halloween overlay, where they turn all the lights off. I bet that would be a really cool way to experience this classic. Haven't been to Disney World since 2018, like I just said, but as of now, Space Mountain and Magic Kingdom is still my favorite Disney ride, and it does have some competition because let's just say the one in California may have something to say about that, and I'll find out whether it's still my favorite Disney ride by the end of this year.
My number 23 is Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood. I had a very short visit to Kennywood. I only had 4 hours because rain cut that day short. I got 4 rides on this thing, and all of them were great. Tale of two halves, so you have twist and drop, then you have a moment to catch your breath, and then you just dive into a ravine. You don't really get any airtime on this drop. It's just a pure speed drop. Going 85 miles an hour, very fast ride. You have a helix through a tunnel. You get a little pop of airtime, but that's just a dose of what's to come, which is my favorite part of the ride, the ridiculous finale. Back to back to back airtime hills. There's a double down and a double up. Incredible ejector airtime, and the minimalist lap bar is always appreciated. Very smooth ride, and I rode it when it was green. I hope to get back there someday and keep lapping it.
My number 23, we're actually staying in Orlando for my favorite B&M hypercoaster, Mako, at SeaWorld Orlando. This coaster seems to be starting to get a reputation of being a lower tier B&M hyper these days from what I hear, but I personally couldn't disagree more. Yeah, the second half isn't the best. I feel like that's why a lot of people are starting to talk down on it. The first half more than makes up for it. That 5-second floater hill is amazing. Some of the best airtime you'll ever find. Glass smooth even after all these years. I was super impressed after my first 20 rides on it in 2021. Then I came back in 2024, rode it another 50 times, and it was even better. Like I said, people might be starting to talk down on this one, but it's my favorite B&M hyper by a decent margin. Even though Diamond Diamondback did take a swing at the top spot. That being said though, Diamondback did miss, which you'll see more of my thoughts on that in part 1.
22 is Joker at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, the most underrated RMC coaster I have been on. An incredible layout, my second favorite pre-lift section on any roller coaster. Twisting first drop gives some great airtime and laterals. Also has a few inversions, which are fun. Step up underflip, 0G roll, and a 0G stall. Also has ample amount of airtime, which is very strong, which I didn't hear about going into it. It's been 7 years since I went on this ride. If I get back to that park, I hope it'll be running as good as ever.
Number 22, this one's a bit of a sore subject because it was closed for us this year. Pantherian at King's Dominion. My 200th coaster back in 2021. I was lucky to get 2 rides on this because it had a 90-minute wait during the one day I had at King's Dominion. I knew there would be no way to get all the coaster credits and get a second ride on this. Even though it cost me the chance to ride Anaconda, which now I'll never have that coaster credit, I made the right call because my second ride was a lot better than my first. It's a Giga coaster. Great sense of speed. This coaster has a reputation for being the most intense out there. I personally don't think so, but it's certainly up there for me. I'm sure this coaster would rank a lot higher if I got some re-rides on it, because right now I don't really remember too much about it.
My number 21 is Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland. Rode this back in 2019 11 times. I got fortunate enough to have a day where they forecasted rain and it didn't come, so the crowds were light, and we just kept riding this. It was by far and away the best coaster there. Great first drop, an incredible speed hill with a dose of laterals, incredible floater airtime hill, some of the strongest floater on any B&M. Hammerhead turnaround is funky and it roars around that turnaround, which is crazy. Another airtime hill, which is also incredible. And then you have the turn and the pop into the brakes. Short ride, but with all that speed, it really carries through to the end.
My number 21 is another Intamin. This one I actually did get to ride this past year. Maverick at Cedar Point. This coaster was a bit of a mixed bag for me this year because there were a couple rides I got where I was not that impressed. I was in rows 2 and 5. Still, I got 4 rides in the front row this past year, and it was as good as ever. That tunnel launch is awesome. I especially love the gunshot like sound that's heard near the second launch. It sounds freaking awesome if you're there in person. The drop is solid, pretty good pacing, somewhat okay inversions, but the inversions are definitely not the strong suit. As far as I'm concerned, it's definitely the best coaster in Frontier Town. When Maverick is running good, it's really good, and that's why it ranks as high for me as it does.
My number 20 is Fury 325 at Carowinds. I did not have a good day at this park. Reservations were sold out, and I only managed to snag 2 rides on Fury, one in the front, one in the back. From the 2 rides I got on Fury, they were great. Good first drop, decent barrel turn. I didn't really get any airtime on the low to the ground turns like some people mentioned. Treble clef was really good. Had some strong floater coming down there. Got a good floater hill, and then you have the dud element of the ride, which is the Helix, which I thought didn't do a whole lot for the ride. It managed to pick back up the speed with those flow ejector airtime hills leading into the brakes. All in all, it's a great ride, very smooth. I just needed more.
My number 20 is Mamba at Worlds of Fun. This coaster absolutely blew my mind when I first rode it in 2022, especially since they recently disabled the mid-course brake run. Obviously, I've never ridden it with the mid-course brake run turned on, so I wouldn't know how lackluster the second half of Mamba would be if it's like that. However, I have ridden Steel Force at Dorney Park, and that mid-course was on, so I imagine that's what trimmed Mamba was like, but trimless Mamba is absolutely ridiculous. That finale is definitely a much better finale than the one on Magnum XL200, which I know no one's going to agree with me on that one. Mamba's finale was much more comfortable than Magnum's. Magnum's was not comfortable when I rode it. The first half was also really good. That Helix I grayed out on. I got back on it in 2023, and it was just as good. Haven't ridden it since then, but if you can get out to Worlds of Fun to ride it, do it.
Unfortunately, as of the start of the 2026 season, based on some reports I've heard from people who have gone out to the park, Mamba's mid-course brake run has been turned back on, so keep that in mind if you're visiting this year.
My number 19 is Millennium Force at Cedar Point. Talk about a turnaround. This coaster was down in the 70s or 80s of my list. All I could say is the bug ride. That one ride elevated this ride so much more than I thought it could ever go. I only rode this in the front this trip. Good decision. I rode it in the back of 2021 and it was The airtime on this was way better than in 2021 and 2019. First overbank didn't really make me gray out, but I could definitely feel the G's. You just have breakneck speed the whole rest of the ride. You have a really good camelback, which was ejector. The speed hill right at the end of the ride, still my favorite part of the ride. Absolutely incredible this time. That overbank at the end also brings on the positives. The bug ride that we did have was pretty close to night. We were just getting pelted the whole ride, and it felt like we were in a store storm. All the forces were accentuated. That is what I wanted out of Millennium Force, and I finally got it.
Number 19 is Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood. Basically take everything I just said about Mamba and improve upon it. That's Phantom's Revenge. Except in length, that is. Phantom's Revenge is a pretty short ride. It feels a lot faster than Mamba. The airtime at the end, Ryan already talked about this, is really crazy ejector. Still glass smooth, which when it's going that fast, you'd want a smooth ride. Somehow Morgan pulled it off when they were transforming it from Steel Phantom. For me, Phantom's Revenge is easily the best ride in the state, and it'll take quite a good coaster in the future to pass it.
My number 18 is Railblazer at California's Great America. I don't think I've ever been on a ride that's this well paced from start to finish. Very short, but what it does pack in is absolutely incredible. One of the best first drops out there. The best or the second best dive loop I've ever done. Then you have the best twisted hill I've ever done, which tries to rip your head off because of how powerful it is. And the drop off the turnaround is equally as strong. And then you have a cutback, which gives a nice pop of laterals. Then you have a floaty 0G roll, and then you have the insane gray out of that overbank turn, and then you have another ejector pop into the brakes. Start to finish, this just does not stop at all. It looks like a cartoon because of how fast it traverses the layout. I also think of how well dressed up this ride is. It's a beautiful looking attraction.
Number 18 is my second favorite coaster at my home park, Boss, at Six Flags St. Louis. Yes, I said it. For the first time, I think ever, the Boss has dropped out of the top spot for my favorite coaster at Six Flags St. Louis. When you consider the fact that it got some standard retracking as well as Titan Track this year, I am very shocked that it lost the title of my top spot in this park. 2024, it was trimming barely at all, and opening day was like that. But because it was triggering overspeed faults almost all day, they had to increase the strength of it. Still, it's an absolute behemoth of a wooden coaster. Very fast, very intense, not the smoothest, but the park is doing work to improve it, which I really do appreciate. And if you can get a night ride on it, it is absolutely ridiculous.
My number 17 is El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure. Going into this, I thought this would be one of my favorite coasters of all time, but it left me wanting more from it. There's two elements on the ride that I thought were overhyped. That first drop. Don't get me wrong, it's a good first drop, but best in the world, not even close. What did surprise me is how strong that double camelback is. One of my favorite elements of all time, and that's why I have it so high on my list. The middle section is filled with floater airtime that is not very strong, not very sustained, a little lackluster, and then the Rolling Thunder Hill, another overrated element. I crawled over that hill when I was riding it. I didn't note about the roughness. This is one of the rougher woodies I've been on, which I did ride it before the accident in 2021. It very much surprised me. That factors into it being a little lower on my list.
Number 17 is the coaster that took the top spot from Boss. What coaster would it be other than Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast? This was a long time coming, I feel like, because even going as far back as 2023, Mr. Freeze was starting to make a strong case for my favorite coaster at Six Flags St. Louis. And I feel like it was not a matter of if it would take the top spot, it was a matter of when. Turns out this past season was the year that it finally took the top spot. It was running absolutely amazing this year. I think back to the ERT during Daredevil days where I rode it 26 times in a row and it was running the best I've ever seen it run. It's unbelievable how intense that ride is. That inverted top hat, that's the most complete element I think of all time. It's got forces of all kinds. Airtime, positives, laterals, even hang time, it's all on there. The launch is not one of the better launches I've done, but it's still pretty fun, I would say. Spike is pretty cool, although riding it backwards is not my favorite way to experience Mr. Freeze, and I'll talk more about that later on, so keep watching.
My number 16 is Legend at Holiday World. I got to Holiday World 5 times this year. Each time, Legend kept getting better and better. Legend has the strongest laterals of any coaster I've ever ridden. The first drop's fun, not a whole lot of airtime. You have a little bit of laterals on it, which makes up for it. Then you have the high off the ground turn, which has one of the nastiest kinks of laterals I think I've ever experienced. You hit a little rough patch going up into the far turnaround, and then you hit your speed hill, which is one of the strongest airtime hills on a wooden coaster. Then you have a massive camelback, which does give airtime, not very strong, but it dives into a tunnel, which is really cool. Then you have another lateral turn into your death helix. When this thing runs fast, your opinion into your seat and you can't get out. It does not let up at all during that entire element. It is unbelievable. Then you have a breather hill, then you have another airtime hill, and then you have the GCI ending, which is incredible. Just pops of airtime here and there, and then you have that last turn into the brakes, which again, when this thing runs fast, you slam to a stop in that brake run. Wow. Did Legend keep improving throughout this entire year?
We're not done talking about the Legend, because that's also my number 16. If you asked me at the start of this year if Legend would break into my top 20, I would have said no chance. Like Brian said, it continues to get better. Unlike Raven, it's very consistent. It always knocks my socks off. The pacing on this ride is flat out ridiculous. It's way too fast for its own good. Best Helix on the planet. It is not even close. It does have good airtime, but you want airtime, go ride the Voyage. I think this is the highest it'll ever rank, and especially with the next coaster on my list, I just can't put it any higher because of this next one.
My number 15 is Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point. My last rides on this thing were 2021. I ended up finishing my visit to Cedar Point with 2 back-to-back back row rides, and it was incredible. This year was a little different. The row 3 rides that I had were scaring me to death. The first drop is fine. The first airtime hill, if you're in the front car, you get a pop and then you pick up speed. One of my favorite elements on the ride is that third hill. It's an incredible hill. Bow tie is really funny because it's a little janky and it has some decent laterals to it and some really good positives to it. And you hit the finale, which only has one hill that is not great. And then you get into the death hills, which try to launch you into space. I was fearing for my life on this ride because I had 2 clicks of room and I really felt like I was gonna fly out. I was not expecting it to be that much stronger, but holy cow, this thing was a riot.
If you can avoid getting stapled on Magnum,
Please do it.
If you're stapled on it, good luck. For my number 15, you may be wondering why can't I rank Legend any higher? You see, Holiday World has this B&M wing coaster called Thunderbird. That was my first ever launch coaster, and it's a huge sentimental favorite of mine. That is a key reason as to why Legend can't rank higher. Despite being my first launch, I think it's still one of my favorites I've experienced. It's really punchy. Each of the inversions are great. The Immelman and vertical loop might make you gray out if it's running fast, which I've always said the thing is a B&M invert in disguise. I also like the inline twist through the barn at the end. You get some really good hang time on it. I would say it's an underrated coaster because a lot of people talk about the Woodies at Holiday World, and don't get me wrong, all the Woodies are great, but Thunderbird is definitely my second favorite coaster in that park, and no matter how many coasters I ride, Thunderbird will always be ranked near the top of my list.
My number 14 is Shivering Timbers at Michigan's Adventure. I am so glad I got to rewrite this in 2025. We opted out for the 3rd day of Great America, and me and Will went there. Oh my gosh, this ride is so good. Airtime buffet. There's one speed hill before the first turnaround that is absolutely insane. Turn around, you're just pinned to the side of your seat, and then you have a little bit of straight section, and then you get hit with an airtime lateral drop, and then it's just airtime buffet towards the end. There's a hill that's kind of like a triangle hill that launches you, and then you have the helix at the end. It's not as strong as Ghost Riders or Legends, but it's still pretty strong, so you're still pinned to the side of your seat. The other key point of this is the 208 retract that happened. I don't think it hindered the experience at all. This is far and away one of my favorite wooden coasters.
Number 14 is Fury 325 at Carowinds. A lot of people's top B&M, I can't quite put it up there because my most recent rides on 2023 weren't quite as good as my first rides on 2022. That being said, it's still a great coaster, so it's obviously good. Great sense of speed, good layout. I love filming this coaster from outside the park. Just watching it fly over the front entrance to Carowinds is a treat in and of itself. Glass smooth, great colors. I mean, you can't really go wrong with this one, although the helix at the end isn't the greatest, but you can look past that for all the amazing elements that Fury 325 does have to offer.
My number 13 is Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Based on a POV of this thing, I thought I was gonna love it. It decided to blow my expectations out of the water. The pre-lift section on this is incredible. It's funny because the tire drive feels like a little bit of a launch, and then you have 5 funky airtime hills. This has some of the strongest airtime of any RMC. Ridiculous pacing, does not have any dead elements. First drop's great. The first Camelback is amazing. The high five's decent. The double down on the green side is extremely strong. And then you have the extremely sustained ejector airtime stepping down on the blue side. Top Gun stall on the green side, one of my favorite stalls of all time. Then you have one of the best airtime hills that I've ever experienced, that blue Camelback. And then you just have an airtime buffet. I actually got to ride this 20 times and at night, and I got a Zen ride on it. This is one of my guilty pleasure rides. It's incredible. And I got 10 out of 20 duels.
Number 13 is Orion at Kings Island. Easily my favorite coaster at Kings Island. This B&M Giga keeps keeps getting better with each year. There are no dead elements on the ride, at least in my opinion, other than maybe the far turnaround, but the wave turn I find to have some decent laterals if you're on the right side of the train. That being said, the elements in the second half carry this coaster. The speed hill is probably my favorite speed hill, and also the twisted camelback at the end. I like the sideways every time you get on it, and that is also one of the better elements of the ride. Set the speed on it, absolutely amazing, and it's an underrated night ride if you're able to get that experience.
My number 12 is a new addition, Top Thrill 2 at Cedar Point. Going into this, I thought it would rank right inside my top 50. I was wrong. The only dead element of this ride is the first launch because of how slowly it accelerates and how good the rest of the ride is. The launch backwards 101 miles an hour, fastest backward launch. You just get shoved forward in your seat the entire time and you're just blasting backwards. On that spike, you just get an unbelievable amount of hang time. And then you have the most sustained speed moment of any coaster I've ever ridden. That third launch. You're rocketing from like 95 to 120 miles an hour. Your face is just getting blasted with wind. This is a front row ride except for one element. That is the top hat drop. This is the most insane drop of any coaster ever. You get ejector airtime over it, and then you just get pinned to the side of your seat with no hope of getting out of it. The laterals are unbelievable. Quite possibly the most demonic element I think I've ever experienced. I like this so much more than the original because the airtime is so much better. It is a longer ride. The sustained speed just felt so much better in my opinion. I couldn't change anything about this. I think it's pretty much a perfect coaster.
Number 12 is a coaster you do not want to ride first thing in the morning. Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa. Why don't you want to ride it first thing in the morning, you may ask? It'll run very slow and leave you disappointed like it did for me after my first ride in 2022. Later in the day, that coaster runs really well. It's got really good pacing, possibly the best pacing of any RMC I've done, although I'm not sure about that. I just think more about it off the top of my head. The airtime on it is really strong, although there's not a ton of it. I also love the overbank after the death roll. I think that's my favorite part of the ride because of how intense it is. The stall is a dead point on the ride. Probably the worst zero-G stall I've experienced. The first drop, that is the best first drop of any RMC I've experienced. And my favorite traditional first drop, as a matter of fact. Iron Gwazi, if you can catch it later in the day, you're in for one of the craziest rides on any coaster.
For the first time ever, Outlaw Run is outside my top 10 at number 11. This is the coaster that got me into being an enthusiast. Always been my favorite coaster here. I was a little disappointed with how it was running this year compared to the Fog Law Run rides we had in 2024 Coaster Christmas. This Coaster Christmas wasn't running quite the same. Still has one of my favorite first drops on any coaster. There's a nasty pothole if you're sitting in the very back row. Very good first inversion, pops you with airtime, then throws you laterally to the right, and then throws you right back. Then you have a twisted hill with a pretty good kink in the middle of it. Nice speed hill. The overbank that turns into an airtime hill. The wave turn is normally amazing. Wasn't hitting as hard this year. And then you have one more speed hill into the double barrel finale, which is also incredible. I'm still gonna have a soft spot for this ride in my heart. I hope that it can redeem itself this year.
Number 11 is Lightning Rod at Dollywood. I've made it pretty clear that I think Twisted Colossus is the most underrated RMC and most underrated coaster out there. I would say Lightning Rod is the second most underrated RMC I've done. Ever since they removed the launch, I've heard a lot of people say it is one of, if not the worst RMCs. Maybe not quite on the same level as Twisted Colossus, but a lot of people do bring it down low on the RMC list now, which, based on my rides in June of 2023, I couldn't disagree more. The launch, while cool, wasn't the best part of the ride. The speed on it was amazing. The quad down, really solid airtime moments. I really like the last turn at the end too. If it's running fast, you're stuck leaning forward in your seat, and it is crazy. I don't care what people say, this is easily the best coaster at Dollywood. Every other coaster there doesn't even come close. I have not ridden it without the launch, so I can't speak for it, but I do know a guy who has ridden it without the launch.
After all these years, I finally got to ride it. My number 10, Lightning Rod at Dollywood. When I was in the station, I was tearing up because of how special that occasion was. Missed it in 2018, missed it in 2021. Never even seen the car before, so I never even seen what it looks like. I got to ride it 10 times. When I first got to ride it, it was in my 30s, and then on my second ride, it was a top 15 coaster. This ride didn't disappoint me. First drop is decent, probably one of the weaker RMC drops. The wave turn has hang time, which is fun. It has a little bit of a pothole before the first twist and shout, which launches you across the train. One of the strongest lateral moments of any coaster while you're getting airtime. The second twist and shout is also nuts. You have a step up in your quad down. The step up is unbelievable unbelievably strong. The first hill of the quad down is probably the weakest hill on the ride, still great. And then it keeps getting stronger and stronger until you hit that speed hill, which might be one of my favorite speed hills of all time. Then you have the final turn into the brakes, which is a gray out moment. You have a floater hill into the end. I couldn't ask for a better first time riding this thing. It would have been good to ride it with the launch, but I am perfectly happy with what I got this past December.
Breaking into my top 10, still my top RMC, although by not that much now, Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City. Ryan kind of mentioned this. 2025 was a bit of an off year for Outlaw Run. I only rode it on one occasion, 3 rides on it, and I think part of the reason why it wasn't running the best is because it was down a lot of the days, so it might have not had the chance to warm up. And I would have gotten more rides on it, but every time I went to go ride it, it broke down, so I didn't get as many rides on as I would have liked. The pacing on it is solid. You can actually see a lot more of the layout now that they cut a lot of the trees down, which that's part of what made the ride cool, was flying through the trees. But it's still a good night ride, don't get me wrong. I'd say it's maybe the second best night ride, although I don't know, I'd have to think about that one. Every element is good. Best first drop on a wooden coaster as far as I'm concerned. The double barrel roll is really good. Ryan mentioned those night rides in the fog. It was less than a second away from overspeeding on those rides in 2024, and that's why it's still my top RMC. Yeah, it was a bit of a letdown this year to an extent. It was running so good in 2024 and even 2023 that I feel like it still deserves a top 10 spot in my list.
My number 9 is the best new coaster that I got in 2025, Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Did I expect a Velocicoaster ride from this thing? No. These are some of my favorite trains because of how comfortable they are. The freeing feeling is incredible. The first launch was way punchier than I thought it would be. The 0G winder has a great dose of hang time. Then you have the 2 pops of airtime leading into your launch, which I didn't think would do anything. I was wrong. Then you have your launch sequence, which you go over that speed hill, go up the top hat. Then you come down and have the best moment of backwards airtime ever. It is unbelievably strong. Then you go up the spike and it is about as good as Mr. Freeze's spike. Then you go through it one more time and it's even stronger. Incredible ejector airtime. And then you have what might be my favorite top hat of all time. It does have my second favorite drop of any coaster just because of how strong it is in the back row and how sustained it is. Then you have, which might be the weakest giant outer bank I've done, but it's still incredibly fun. And then you have my favorite stall of all time. What is wrong with this thing? Me just dying on the stall. It flung me side to side so hard. So much hang time, and then the whip coming out of it is unbelievable. Then you have the lateral transitions from side to side. Then you have the wave turn that throws you out to the side, and then you hit the brakes. Very underrated. This is one of the best coasters I've ever ridden, and I don't think you could do much to improve it. I was so happy to get on this thing because it was closed our first day.
Number 9 for me is also Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. This thing is no joke. I was not expecting this to be my favorite coaster in Virginia, but between being absolutely blown away by just how brilliant every element on this ride is and the fact that Pantherian was closed, Pantheon is my favorite in the state. Even if I did get to reride Pantherian, now I'm not sure if it'd be able to top Pantheon because Pantheon absolutely blew my mind. Every element knocked my socks off. I went into this expecting a ride on the level of Maverick. I got a ride on the level of another Intamin multi-launch coaster, which you all know which one that is, but we'll get to that in just a bit.
My number 8 is Skyrush at Hershey Park. I haven't been on this since 2021, and I only got 3 rides on it when I was there, because the first day, the entire day it was raining. The second day, it was unbelievably packed. My favorite first drop of any coaster. Some of the strongest airtime of any coaster I've ever ridden. Unbelievable positives, unbelievable laterals. Stangle dive, insane lateral moment, and then you have a lateral moment after that, and then you have Twisted Hill, which, again, ejector laterals, and then you have another hill, and then you have the glide into the brakes. I rode this with the old restraints, and I didn't have a problem with them at all. I really hope that the new restraints don't really hinder the laterals on this thing too much. If it increases the strength of airtime, then I won't be too upset. Hopefully, the ride will continue to be as good as I remember it.
For my number 8, we already saw this coaster early on the list, and you guys probably know which one it is, but if you don't, it is Mr. Freeze at Six Flags Over Texas. I said that backwards is not my favorite way to ride Mr. Freeze because on this one, you can ride it forwards, which I personally prefer to ride it facing forwards. The launch, especially, I like facing forward better, and the spike, if you're in the front row, you get a backwards vertical drop from nearly hypercoaster heights, which is really cool. A lot of people prefer this ride facing backwards, which I can get behind because it's absolutely demonic. Since I've ridden it backwards a couple hundred times before getting to ride it forwards, it's not the most special ride experience to me. That being said, if you're able to ride either of the Mr. Freeze clones, I highly recommend it because the clock may be ticking on these two coasters.
My number 7 is Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa. I was going in expecting this to be my number 1 coaster. It fell a little short. Really good first ride. I thought it was top notch. Then I got to ride it in the back later in the day and I discovered some flaws with it. Best RMC first drop. Giant outer bank is incredible. Death roll is incredible in the back. The best overbank of the planet because of how whippy it is. My favorite wave turn. Then you have a step up into your back-to-back dead elements. The second wave turn was weak floater and the stall is the worst stall. Then you have camelback into the double hills into your final drop, which is all pretty good airtime. I would like to it have been a little bit stronger, and then you go into your brakes. Very well presented, but I would like to have a little more when I go back to that park.
When I was talking about the ride experience on Pantheon being on the level of another intimate multi-launch coaster, the coaster in question happens to be Jurassic World Velocicoaster Islands of Adventure, which is my number 7. I've always said this is the most complete coaster ever built since it has everything that makes a coaster great, in my opinion. Great theming, great layout, diverse collection of elements. I don't have many complaints about it. It's about as flawless as you can get from a complete package perspective. It's not quite my favorite because it doesn't showcase my preferences for launches, speed, and intensity the best of any coaster, but it is certainly up there. The most sorceral, best inversion on the planet. The dive loop is especially underrated. That second launch is really good, although I do like Maverick's tunnel launch a little bit more. Like I said, it's a complete package, and if it's your number 1, I can totally understand it.
My number 6 is Storm Chaser at Kentucky Kingdom. Talk about a coaster that blew my expectations out of the water. This one did it the best. The way it was running in 2024, it was just ripping through the track way too fast. We did a ride force on this. I don't know how accurate this is, but it said negative 2.9 on the trick track double up. Barrel roll down drop's incredible. The camelback after is pretty much El Toro level strong, maybe even a little stronger. The overbank, you get airtime going into it, and then you get whip coming out of it. Then the twisted hill is freaking insane ejector airtime with laterals. And you get positives going up into that second hill, and you get thrown sideways. Another overbank. This one's just all positives. Another ridiculously strong camelback. Then you have the 0G roll, which is kind of floaty. And then you have that trick track double up, which is the strongest airtime I've ever experienced. The double down right after is almost equally as strong. You have the 270-degree turn with an overbank, and then you have absolutely nuts laterals going into the final brakes. It could not have been running any better. That's why I have it over Iron Gwazi, because there's no dead elements, and every element hit way harder.
Barely missing my top 5 at number 6 is Millennium Force at Cedar Point. Giga coasters are all about showcasing speed, and no Giga does that better than Millennium Force. The bug ride, as Ryan referred to it, that was our first ride on it this past year. It was unbelievable. I hadn't ridden it since 2021. I remember really liking it in 2021, but after my rides this year, I'm like, why do I have this ranked outside my top 25? And it's my least favorite Giga. It's definitely my favorite Giga now. Since I'm one who really likes speed, this thing is straight up my alley. This thing I've always described as Sonic the Hedgehog IRL, because you're just flying all over Cedar Point. The overbanks are really intense. The airtime is good. At night, especially, is really good. And I had a really tough time deciding between that or Velocicoaster. After thinking about it more, the sense of speed on Millie is too good to pass up. The bug ride and the night ride are what solidified Millennium Force over Velocicoaster for me. Also, I actually did get a Zen ride on this one somehow.
My favorite Giga is Intimidator 305, now known as Pantherian at King's Dominion. I was unbelievably bummed out that I didn't get to ride it this year because of my memories of the 2021 marathon that I had on it 8 times in a row. This is controversial, but it is my favorite drop of any Giga. Then you have the blackout turn. I got to ride this ride 13 times when I was there. Every single time but one made me gray out. The 150-foot ejector hill after that is incredible airtime. Then you have the speed hill, which gives a decent dose of floater. And then you have the most aggressive lateral snaps of any coaster in the world. They try to rip you in half with how they throw you side to side. Then you have the trimmed camelback, which I didn't think hindered the ride at all. It flew over those 2 hills with breakneck speed. The twisted hill at the end has a demonic lateral snap, and then my favorite pop into any brakes. This is the most intense coaster I've ever ridden, and I stand by that to this day.
Pantherian was the most intense coaster Ryan's ever done. The one that I think is the most intense is the Incredible Hulk Coaster at Islands of Adventure, and that starts off my top 5. The intensity on the Incredible Hulk Coaster is ridiculous. Like, if you can get an overspeed ride on it, which from my experience, they were more common in the morning, the speed in which Hulk takes its first half is diabolical. The 0G roll, Cobra roll, and the first corkscrew I think are my favorite in those inversion types because they have crazy whip, good positives, or even both. It's my top B&M, and I don't know how many coasters out there can top it. If you can get a Zen ride when the soundtrack is working, which that's the reason why I had a mixed bag with it. Not all my rides last more there had the soundtrack going 100%. The on-ride soundtrack on the rides it worked the full time, it was good. That's the major reason why I ranked this coaster so high. And actually, I forgot to mention Mako SeaWorld Orlando also has a great soundtrack.
My number 4 is Air Force One at Fun Spot Atlanta. I had a very brief visit to this park. I got to ride this ride twice, and then I had to drive back to St. Louis. Every element hits. First drop, great. Raven Trust Dive is fun because you get a pop of airtime, and then you get the lateral twist down. Then you have one of the best speed hills of any coaster. Then you have my third favorite stall of any ride out there. And then the best outer bank of any coaster. The double up is absolutely incredible. The arcade roll is one of my favorite inversions. And then you have the finale, which is just back-to-back bunny hills over and over and over again. I would have liked those to be a little bit stronger, but since I rode it early in the day, I will have to give it another chance.
Get ready for back-to-back-to-back strata coasters at my top 4. Number 4, we're starting things off with Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point. One of the best one-trick ponies I have ever experienced. This launch is unbelievable. Got 7 rides in the front row, July of 2021. Within the last month of operation of it, and I feel extremely lucky to have ridden it because we all know what happened in August of that year. One of the shortest coasters I've ever experienced, and it's one of the biggest adrenaline rushes, but it's not the best coaster to use that plot of land.
My number 3 is my favorite wooden coaster, Voyage at Holiday World. There is not much wrong with this thing. Sometimes it runs slow, sometimes it runs unbelievably fast. And then you have Hollywood Nights, which is some of the best coaster rides ever. I think my second favorite wooden drop out there. Then you have 2 back-to-back camelbacks. The second one is a little weird. It has a little jackhammering moment. You have a speed hill with lateral ejector. Then you have another camelback, which is probably the weakest of the bunch. My favorite element of the ride, that twisted double down. Then you have a few more hills, a 90-degree bank, 2 more twisted hills, which when this thing's running fast are incredible ejector airtime. Then you hit the mid-course brake run on most days, off during Hollywood Nights. Second half starts off with a triple down. Then you just have a run of hills towards the end. You have another 90-degree bank. Then you have the twisted hill over the lift hill, which has an incredible snap under the station, another twisted hill, and then you have the pop into the final turn into the brakes. Everything about this ride screams enjoyable. The maintenance scheme at Holiday World has kept this up to a T. It is unbelievably smooth for Woody. I don't see it falling outside my top 5 anytime soon.
Number 3, taking the bronze spot. This one is a rough one because it is gone. Of course, I'm referring to Kingda Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure. This was basically Dragster, but with a better launch and an airtime hill. That launch on Kingda Ka, easily my favorite coaster element of all time, and it's just insane. The top hat, it was the world's tallest coaster. It was really cool to experience that. When you compare that to the launch I just talked about, it's an afterthought. But you rode Kingda Ka for the launch, and while it's no longer with us, we gotta hope that Spin Da Ka or Phantom's Fire or whatever the heck is replacing it, I don't know what it's gonna be called. We gotta hope that whatever is replacing it is just as good. One of the best one-trick ponies out there, if not the best, and I miss this thing.
My number 2 and my former number 1, Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. I am glad to say it's running better than it was in 2021. Got to ride it this past year. 6 more rides on it, so I have 10 total on this incredible feat of engineering. So many elements. I think it has some of the most elements of any coaster in the world packed into such a tight space. This ride is almost all airtime. First drop, incredible. Speed hill, not great, but it gives you airtime. Top hat is incredible ejector airtime, extremely sustained. Outer bank was hitting again this year. Then you have a step up into the 0G roll. That inversion is incredible because you just keep rotating over and over again. Then you have an overbank. Then you have my favorite inversion on the ride, the snap cutback, because of how insane the laterals are coming off of that. Another step down with incredible airtime. Step up into the mid-course brake run. This is the telling point of the ride. If it trims, it's a top 10 coaster. If it doesn't, it is my number 2 coaster ever. If it doesn't trim, that second half runs like a freight train. It just does not stop. Ejector airtime, inversions, an insane wave turn, and then you have the 4th inversion, which has the strongest lateral snap of any RMC I think I've ever experienced. And then you have the run of airtime hills into the end, which is my favorite finale of any coaster. Not a whole lot to improve this coaster, but my number 1 does have something to say about that.
This couldn't be more appropriate. My number 2 is Top Thrill 2 at Cedar Point. This takes the biggest complaint I had with Kingda Ka and Top Thrill Dragster and fixes it. I wouldn't say it's a super long ride, but it's a lot longer than those two Stratas, I tell you. And it is a much more complete ride. Second and third launches are absolutely insane. I especially love the third launch, although I still do think Max Force is the best operating launch in the country because of the kick on it. The third launch on Top Thrill 2 didn't have the same kick that I hoped it would, but it's still an absolutely ridiculous element. This coaster, you need to be in the front to get the best experience. I rode a couple times, not in the very front end, you couldn't feel any of the speed. If you can get a front row ride on Top Thrill 2, it is one of the best coaster rides you'll ever experience. As far as I'm concerned, it's the best steel coaster I've ever been on, and I don't think many coasters out there could beat it for me, but there is one that does.
My number one is Velocicoaster at Islands of Adventure. This is the perfect ride for me. I've always grown up a dinosaur fan and huge Jurassic World fan. This coaster blends a perfect layout with perfect theming. First launch, really punchy. Then you have the Immelman, then the dive loop, which is my second favorite dive loop. And then you have airtime hills and overbanks and some lateral moments weaving in and out of the Raptor paddock, which is such a good design. Then you have that second launch, which is my second favorite operating launch at the moment. You just rocket down that tunnel up into the top hat, which gives incredible airtime. Then you rocket into a stall, second favorite stall of all time. Then you have the wave turn, which is great airtime. And then you have the outer bank, more laterals than airtime, but you still get a dose of it. Then you have an overbank, a little speed hill into quite possibly my favorite element ever, the Mosasaurus roll, with laterals, upside down ejector airtime, and with over water, mind you less. Then you have a twisted ejector hill, then you have a pop into the brakes, rounding out a perfect experience. I don't see anything beating this anytime soon.
Hey Ellis, why don't you come say what my number one coaster is?
My pleasure to do that. If you see my separate top 10, you'll know that my number one is Voyage at Holiday World. He has that same number one that I do.
Yes, sir, I do. There is no coaster out there that is as good as this, at least out of the ones that I've done. Yes, it doesn't have a launch like the other coasters in my top 5, but it makes up for that by providing an out-of-control, relentless, long ride experience, packed in with tons of intensity, great pacing. Yeah, it does have a lot of airtime, which airtime isn't my favorite part of a coaster, but I like it for different reasons other than that. If you can get night rides on it, it is still the best coaster I've experienced. And if you think I'm judging it based on Hollywood Nights, I don't do that because the night rides I got this past year, even with the mid-course turned on, I thought it was just as good. So take it as you will, but Voyage trimmed or trimless is number one, and it's not exactly close. And I don't know how many coasters out there could top it for me. That concludes our two-part series of our top 50. We enjoyed making this video, and we're excited to update our list either at the end of this year or at the start of next year. So stay tuned for that. And if you haven't seen part 1 of our top 50 or Ellis's top 10, check those out via the link in the description. And also, we had some really funny moments while filming these videos that'll be in the video after this. So if you want to get a good laugh at some of the fails we've had, check that out. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you later.